Longines is one of the more successful and storied Swiss watch manufacturers over its lengthy history, which dates all the way back to 1832. But when most of us think of vintage Longines, we think of beautifully proportioned dress watches from the 50s, and their critical contribution to the pilot's watches of the early 30s, sometimes overlooking the important history of Longines dive watches. Important it was, with several horological underwater firsts attributed to the Saint-Omer-based brand, including the original water-resistant chronograph back in 1937. In that spirit, today we'll be taking a closer look at a few important dive watches that tell part of Longines history, showcasing several pieces that we were lucky enough to handle from the Longines Museum collection, which focuses on the golden age of the dive watch around the 70s and 60s. First up, let's take a look at the original watch that the contemporary Longines Legend Diver is based on, the super compressor Longines dive watch reference 7042. This 42mm watch was first produced in 1959, together with the case-making firm Picares SA, which helped execute the double crown design that is still closely linked to Longines. The double crown was designed so that the rotating dive bezel would be protected underneath the glass covering the dial and prevent it from being damaged by sand or seawater. The watch was powered by the self-winding caliber 19AS that beat at 18,000 VPH and was guaranteed for 120 meters of water resistance. Next up, we have a watch that was at the technical cutting edge when it was developed in 1967, with the Longines Ultrachron Diver reference 7970. This was the first diver's watch driven by a high frequency caliber that beat at 36,000 VPH and was accurate to within 2 seconds per day, which was extremely impressive for a dive watch at the time. It featured a bold steel cushion case that measured 41mm in diameter, as well as a bright orange minute hand that contrasts beautifully against the black dial. It was guaranteed to 200 meters of water resistance, secured with a screw-down caseback. It was a year later, in 1968, that the Longines Diver chronograph reference 8224 was released, which also featured a cushion case that was made with Picares, the same case maker that assisted with the development of the Longines super compressor case. This 3-register chronograph also had an internally rotating bezel that could be used with the crown at 10 o'clock and was water resistant to 200 meters. Then, in 1970, we saw the Longines Ultronic Diver reference 8484, a bold and colourful dive watch that perfectly encapsulated the mood of early 70s watch design. The bold colours across the bezel and dial, the shaped 41mm stainless steel case, and the accurate tuning fork movement were all hallmarks of the time, serving up some serious character on the wrist. Finally, we have another piece from around 1970 in the Longines Diver's chronograph reference 8229-1. Once again, using the period popular cushion case shape, this 42mm 3-register chronograph features a high contrast black and white dial with a pop of colour in the red seconds hand. It's powered by a Valjoux 72 mechanical movement and has a handy rotating dive bezel with a 60-minute scale around it. These watches not only show a telling cross-section of the areas that Longines pioneered in the early decades of underwater watches, but offer a platform to better understand the Longines dive watches that came after them. Without these watches, the path would not have been paved for the modern Hydroconquest sports collection, which have been a very successful part of the Longines lineup today. Another important part of the modern Longines DNA is the celebration of these early dive watches with the heritage-inspired Legend Diver, another core part of the current collection. Without the combination of Longines' innovation half a century ago and their well-known and meticulous record-keeping, such watches would not exist to be enjoyed by enthusiasts around the world today. So there you have it, the history of some of the most important Longines dive watches from the 1960s and 1970s. Which should give you a better understanding of why the current Longines dive watch collection looks the way that it does today. If you learn anything, let us know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.